Hey, it's Danny from projectmanaverse.com, and in this video I'm going to explain how to mobilize your IT project. So let's get started. First of all, what is project mobilization? Project mobilization is basically setting up your project so it's ready to go and ready to run. If you think about it, projects are huge endeavors. There's lots of resources involved, there's lots of money involved, there's lots of deliverables, there's lots of governance. They're these big vehicles to deliver change, and they start as just an idea in someone's head or a line on a piece of paper somewhere in a business case. And what we want to do is convert that idea into that big project, that big structure that creates all those outputs and does all that work. And to do that, we need to mobilize the project. We need to get things set up so the vehicle is ready to deliver the change and the project can run and keep going until the completion date where you actually go live and deliver your product to the customer. So that's what project mobilization is. It's basically setting up the project, setting up the structure, getting the resources in place. So I prepared a little bit of a checklist for you. So if you're brand new to this, you can go through this checklist and make sure you're doing all these steps. Now, I will say this might vary slightly from organization to organization, but generally they follow the same pattern. It's going to be very similar between different companies. Might not be exactly the same, but it will be similar. So if you follow this checklist, you should be fine. So first of all, number one is you probably need to agree some kind of seed money. And seed money is just a little bit of money just to get the project going, to pay for yourself, maybe pay for an architect, just so you can do that initial work and a bit of documentation and maybe an initial business case. So seed money is typically about 20, 25 grand, actual seed money, and that'll be enough to pay for yourself for a little bit and for an architect, so you can just get the initial structure set up so you can get going. So to get that money, you probably just need to go to your portfolio manager, or it might be there in place already. It's probably not going to be very hard to get it, because if this project is being discussed and we want to mobilize the project, then people have thought about it and there's probably budget for it somewhere, but you just want to make sure you've got that money secure. It might be that you're expected to do it on your time for free. Sometimes that's the case, but usually you want a bit of seed money to get the project going. Next is you need some kind of high level design scope or just scope document. So some kind of document that explains what the project is doing, and you don't have to be detailed at this point. It can be very high level, just basic scope. What are you trying to deliver? The high level bullet points, maybe some diagrams in there, or some kind of high level design document in terms of what you're building. And you'll probably need some help with that. Maybe an architect. You can get the help of an architect in the business to help you, or a BA, but there'll be someone there in the organization that you can go to help you put that document together. It's probably not going to be you that writes that document, because you don't have the knowledge to be able to do it. So that's the next thing, some kind of high level document that describes what you're doing, either in the form of a high level design document or a scope document. The next thing is you want to get some kind of rough idea of the IT costs of the project, because this channel is all about IT projects. So what is usually available is something called a OTE, or an outline technical estimate. And this is a very high level estimate of the IT budget and what's involved in doing the work. And they can basically look at the project you're doing, look at that initial design scope or that initial scope document I talked about earlier, and they can look at that and say, right, based on similar projects, we think you're going to need a bit of a DBA, some engineers, you need some hardware, and they'll put together like an Excel of all the costs they think it's going to that are going to be required to be able to deliver this project. And it'll be very high level again, so there'll be a high tolerance on it. So they'll give you an estimate. Let's say it's 500 grand, and they'll usually say it's 500 grand, but we'll put a plus or minus 100% on there. So it could be $1 million, or it could be, very low. So just to cover themselves, but it gives you some idea of the cost of it. So once you've got all that, what you typically do is create an initial business case. Business case is basically your case to do the project, because you're going to have to go somewhere to some kind of authority body and request the full amount of money, or at least partial amount of money, to do the project. And in order to put that business case together, you're going to have those estimates. So that's why the OTE, the outline technical estimate from the IT department, is very important. On top of that, you want to think about what sort of business resources might be required. So do you need a full-time test manager? Do you need a BA, a business analyst? Do you need an architect? Do you need some SMEs in the business that are going to help you with testing? Think about those high level resources and how much of their time you're going to need. And there's nothing to stop you having those conversations with those departments now to let them know, look, this project is coming. We're in the mobilization phase. Do you have anyone available coming up in the next few weeks that can join the project? You might have a choice of people, which is always great. And you might need to go out to the business areas and say, look, we're going to be this software that you use every day. I'm doing a project to upgrade that. So I'm going to want some business SMEs who really understand the software to be part of the project team, probably help with the testing. So do you have anyone available that's going to be available in a few weeks or a month to join the project? And can we have them? Do we have to pay for them? If so, how much is that going to be? And again, you can put that in the project costs in your initial business case. So once you've got your initial business case together, there's quite a lot that goes into the business case, but I'll save that for a separate video. Once you've got that, you take it to whatever approval board you need to go to get the money, state your case. Sometimes these forums can be quite tough. They can really grill you, so be prepared for it. All depends on the organisation, but I've been to some brutal ones before where they really drag you through the coals to justify why you need the money and why you need to do the project. So be prepared for that. Make sure your initial business case has been thoroughly checked and approved before you go to that forum. You ask for the money and ideally you get the money. Now, they'll either approve the entire project, the entire budget, but usually they'll just approve like the first few months of budget. And what you'll need to do then is go, once your project has been mobilized and you've got going with it and you're in the design phase of your project, you create the full business case. When you've got the full set of requirements, you know exactly what you're doing, you know what the full plan is, and then you know the realistic cost of the entire project, and you go back to that approval body with a full business case and ask for the entire project money. Sometimes you can get all the project money in the first one, but usually it takes two rounds to get it. Okay, so you got your money. So now you want to make sure the resources are in place. So you can go out to those teams you spoke to earlier, said, right, I've got the money. I need those people now. Can we get them onboarded? So you get them onto your project. If you've got contractors you're bringing in, you might need to onboard them. There'll be some kind of onboarding process your company has to get them access to all your systems, make sure all the security is in place. They might have to do some training to get up to speed. But yeah, make sure you're onboarding all your resources, internal and external. And next, you want to put the governance in place, the project governance. Now, usually you don't decide what the governance is for your project. Your company, your organization will have governance in place already, especially if you work in a change function or a project management function. There'll be clear governance that you have to follow. But you just need to make sure that's formalized and put in place and you're on all the records and you're part of all the meetings. So your project becomes part of that governance process. And it's usually something like some milestone review sessions, some steering sessions, and you'll need to, there'll be some kind of documentation checklist that you'll need to follow. There'll probably be some kind of software that you need to update in terms of putting your project details in there. You might get a code for your project. You might get a cost code for your project. There'll be lots of setting up things you need to do in terms of governance, but that's your kind of standard procedure. And you just want to make sure you've got a clear steering group in place. Now, again, your company will probably have regulations and procedures about having a steering group. The steering group is basically a decision-making forum on your project where you go to make all the key decisions and where you go to give all those key status updates. And your steering group will have some senior people on there. Might be the portfolio manager, might be the business head of function that is using that application, who owns that application in the business, the application that you're changing or delivering. It might be the project exec or sponsor. Well, it will almost certainly be them. There'll be a few key people, senior people. Might be your project management office representative, the senior person there. There'll be this forum of people that you'll go to with key decisions, key updates, and they will ultimately make those decisions. So make sure that is set up as part of your governance. Next is make sure you've got your charging model in place. So obviously the resources on your team will need to be paid for. So how is that going to happen? What's the charging model? Do they enter their time into a system and that money is automatically charged? Do they have to backfill a role? So if you are using someone that works in the business and they have a day-to-day job. They're not usually involved in projects, but they're going to join your project team. Sometimes their role becomes empty because they're supporting with the project, and that role has to be filled. So you might have to pay that department with a monthly transfer from your budget every month to make sure that resource is paid for. And that mechanism will be slightly different from the rest of the resources on your team. Again, external contractors will probably have a different charging method. So make sure you're up to date with all the different charging methods, and you know you've got one place to track all your budget for the project, and you've got a nice forecast for the whole year. So you've got a list of all your resources on the project, January to December, whatever length of period your project is going to be, and what's the forecast for all those people. Are they full-time on the project? If so, it's very easy. You can just work out how much they're going to be charging to the project every month. If they're half-time, just work it all out. Make sure you've got things like Christmas and holidays in there as well, and there might be some kind of overhead percentage that needs to be added onto that price. You just got to check out what your company policy does, but make sure you're up to date with the charging mechanism and make sure that's all in place at the start of the project. What else? You probably want to set up a SharePoint site or some kind of Confluence page, whatever you're choosing, to have a central point for all your documents of your project where everyone can go to. It's all in one place. It's not scattered all over the place. You want one place, nicely structured with nice folder layout. You could decide to do a define, build, test, deploy folder structure. You can do it any way you want to, but make sure it's organized and all your documents are stored in one place for all your project documentation. And the last thing is you want to do a project, actually two more things. Number one is set up all your regular meetings. So things like your project working group meetings, get those in the diary recurring for the whole year. Get your risks and issues reviews in the diary for the whole year. All those recurring meetings, get them set up at the start. And then what you want to do is have a project kickoff session, maybe a workshop for the whole day where you get all those key team members involved, just as a kind of a formal, we're starting the project is kicked off kind of day. And it doesn't have to be very complex. You can just go through the scope of the project, go through roles and responsibilities, and ideally you want to create together a very high level plan of what you're doing for that year. And it doesn't have to be detailed at that point because you're at the start of the project, but you want an ideally high level plan. Now, once you've got all that in place, you can say your project is mobilized and you are now in full project mode, and you've gone out of the mobilization phase and you're into the first phase of your project, which is usually the design phase. Okay, that's pretty much it. That is how you mobilize your project. Hopefully that was useful. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos like this one, hit the subscribe button. And until tomorrow, please take care.